Comedian Pete Holmes once said, "Words matter. They're not just sounds, they're spells. We're casting spells on people." And I see this in my act, he says. I'll pick someone out sometimes in the first row and say, "That's a great shirt. You made a great choice when you decided to wear that shirt tonight, sir." And you'll see them transform. You'll see their eyes light up and they smile really big. So what if the magic in your storytelling wasn't about sleight of hand or being flashy or clever hooks, but it was about creating a connection with someone in a way that transforms the way they view themselves or the way they view the world? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I am your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. This is episode 205, and today my guest is Jimi Gibson, Jimi with an I. And Jimi is a marketing strategist at Thrive Agency. He's a TEDx speaker, but most importantly, he is a professional magician, and he's done magic for decades, almost his whole life. And we talk about the parallels between storytelling and magic. And he shows me how he uses his magician background to be better at connecting with people, at understanding what sparks them, what makes them excited and engaged. This is exactly what storytelling is. I want to read this quote to you from Alan Moore really quickly. It displays exactly what I'm talking about. Alan Moore, if you don't know, is an English author and a graphic novelist who wrote Swamp Thing and V for Vendetta and Watchmen. And he said, "There's some confusion as to what magic actually is. I think it can be cleared up if you just look at the very earliest descriptions of magic. Magic in its earliest form is often referred to as the art. I believe this is completely literal. I believe that magic is art, and that art, whether it be writing, music, sculpture, or any other form, is literally magic. Art is, like magic, the science of manipulating symbols, words, or images to achieve changes in consciousness." To achieve changes in consciousness, to change the way you think, to change the way you view the world, to transform you. This is exactly what storytelling is. It is casting spells. It is magical when you understand how to connect with someone so deeply that it makes a chemical change and they act differently, they behave differently because of the story that you told them. This is why this conversation is so incredible. And let me tell you something, folks. Jimi shows exactly how to create that magic within you. In fact, he does a magic trick to me on the show. I asked him a question. He responded with, "Well, let me show you." And he does like a 7-minute magic trick to me in the middle of the show that completely sold me. Like, he got me so good. This alone is worth the price of admission for this episode, which is free, by the way. So if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, that is the part you must stick around for. I've never had anyone ever do this before on the show, and it showed me how you can cast spells on people even through a virtual interview like this. So here's my conversation with Jimi Gibson, and I hope that you love it. Jimi, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
Oh, thank you, Rain. Coolest name ever, by the way.
Hey.
Excited to be here. I know we're going to dig into some fun stuff.
Well, I like that you're starting with compliments. That always makes me feel good in the morning. Also, coolest spelling of the name Jimi, Jimi. Reminds me of another famous Jimi, once upon a time.
Yep, there's a story behind that, but yeah.
Ooh, let's start there, pal. I mean, I'm intrigued now. You got my curiosity up. What is the story behind the spelling of your name?
Well, my real given name is James, so obviously the nickname is Jimi, and I was Jimmy all the way through school. And then as I was going off to college, I was like, you know what? I think it's time for a change. And so I didn't have to make a legal change. I just spelled it differently, right? And so I can always tell who I knew from my childhood and who I know post-college because of the way they spell it. Of course, my wife has never known any other spelling. I have one brother who refuses to spell it this way. and my mother will never spell it this way. So anytime I'm signing a birthday card or anything, I have to think, okay, how do I sign my name? So anyway, it's kind of funny, but it is memorable. So
What was the catalyst behind that besides just I feel like it's time for a change? I mean, that's such a transitional period in one's life anyway.
yeah.
Was it just part of that, or was there something else?
No, I know we might get into my background as a professional magician, and
Oh
they're
yeah.
always talking about being, having a stage name. And,
Okay, there we go.
Houdini said was his biggest regret was that he didn't go by his real name. Uh, and so I was like, well, I'm not going to make up some corny name, but maybe if I spelled it a little bit differently, it would have a little theatrical flair to it. And I knew I was going into the creative field, and yeah, so I don't think there
Well, it
was any
worked on
more
me, Jim.
deep thinking than that. So
And it doesn't have to be, right? But
yeah.
it worked. I mean, I responded to it. Let's go ahead and stick there. I'm interested when I talk to folks that have a performative background, they're speakers, anybody that is out there putting their thoughts into the world or their gifts, like in the magic world. I'm always curious, like, did you grow up as like a theater kid? Were you that type? Because I did, and so it wasn't a hard transition for me, even though I was predominantly an athlete. When you were a kid, did you already have that element of performance in your life?
Yeah, I guess it was redirected class clown to give me a purpose. um, I was digging through some boxes a few years ago, and I came across this little membership card to Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like all these memories started flooding back, and I flipped over the card. And of course, in typewritten, I guess they put it in a typewriter and mailed it to me. It was Jimmy. And then the date on it was, I did the quick math. I was 4 years old. I'm like, wow, that's kind of early to get involved in something like that. And so I got a magic kit for my birthday when I was 6 from a friend, and loved being able to kind of do something that nobody knew the secret of, and gave me an excuse to perform. My parents would have a get together or a yard sale, and I'd sell tickets for 25 cents and pull everybody from the yard sale over. My dad was a high school principal, and after the football games, like the teachers and folks would get together for a little gathering afterwards, and they'd shove all the kids in a back bedroom to watch TV. Well, I took my magic kit and I was out performing for the adults, and they were like, where's Jimmy? Oh, he's out there doing magic tricks. And so, yeah, it just kind of went from there. And then in high school, I met a guy who was an account executive at an advertising agency. And that was sort of at the tail end of the Mad Men days, and there is sort of an underground community of magicians, and there's clubs all over the country. And this was a club that we both belonged to. And, I was just a teenager, and he said that there was a huge global corporation that we've all heard of that needed a performer to help with some promotional shows. Would I be interested? And I was like, wow, okay. I don't have to work retail or cut grass. I can do these shows. And so, yeah, I was doing 50 some shows a year, and that lasted for like 16 years.
Jeez.
And as I started to hang out at the ad agency and thought, wow, these are cool people. There may have been somebody there named Rain, by the way. And I just thought if there was a career that I could pursue, this would probably be the most directly related to magic, because you have to sort of capture attention.
Yeah.
You have to elicit that curiosity. There's a climax to the trick. There's a call to action in a marketing message. And so that started almost like a dual career path. And so I would do shows on nights and weekends. I actually coordinated a deal with the owner of the ad agency I was working at the time, where I would come into work at 6 a.m., leave at noon, go to a theme park that was nearby, perform 6 shows. That was like this huge illusion show with 22 cast members and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it was baby steps along the way, but I just kept pushing. And, there's other stuff that happened along the way, but yeah, that's a quick flyby of how it all got off the ground, and how
and
I
now
just
those two
kept going.
paths have kind of merged into one, it seems. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I still perform as a magician. I donate shows to local community events, and I go downtown when they're handing out food to the homeless, and I do magic tricks for the homeless, and I get paid to do other things. And then if I'm doing some sort of speaking in my role, I'll do a magic trick to help,
Yeah.
Bring the point across and be different than everybody else who's flashing PowerPoint ad nauseum up on the screen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I'm very impressed by that. I would say it sounds like it just kind of happened organically for you, which is awesome. We talk a lot on the show about these unique intersections that people have, and like finding where you can stand out by combining your worlds. I've struggled with that, my whole life, of like not trying to compartmentalize things, which I did for too long, and instead like lean into them. So I really admire that you allowed those to grow together, and it seems like they help one another quite a bit. I know a lot of people struggle with that kind of that finding that aspect of their identity, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got a TEDx talk called "You Have Magic Power, Use It for Good," and we might provide the link to that in the show notes. But really, the whole message of that is we all have our abracadabra that can be anything. It could be something that you make money. It could be something you're passionate about. It could be, you play the guitar as a hobby. You have the best cookie recipe and everybody always compliments you on that. And you shouldn't be ashamed of that. And I think when we get into this world of, especially with the AI content that we have out there with the easy button of everybody clicking ChatGPT, it's just very vanilla. There's not a lot of texture to it. We talk about conflict and storytelling. There's no prompt that ChatGPT is going to be able to read your mind and know what the scars and bruises that you've been through to get where you are, the things that you're passionate about, the things that light you up inside, the infectious enthusiasm you have for something that can rub off on somebody else. And if you're not really passionate or willing to step out and go, yeah, that's kind of what I do. People love the behind the scenes. They love knowing more, the quirks and the eccentricities that you have are what gives texture to your personality, whether you're in business or whether you're telling stories or creating characters in something that you're writing. Those are the little nuggets that people get to know how you're going to react in a situation. And so be proud of it. Go out and, if you're a leader out there, activate the abracadabra in everybody in your company. If you do have that cookie recipe, why not use that and send those out as, holiday gifts in a little box, or have them in the lobby when somebody comes in and like, wow, this is the best cookie I've ever had. Oh yeah, Susan back in accounting makes those. That's her passion. Da, 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 da. Like, they can go hand in hand. You don't have to pick one or the other.
It's so refreshing to hear. I know that a lot of brands, whether personal brands or big global corporations, still struggle with leaning into that and adopt things like, using AI tools, et cetera, that keep them kind of doing the same stuff they see everybody else doing, right? Like not leaning into that unique intersection. Why do you think people are so hesitant or reticent to lean into that thing that actually could differentiate them, that could separate them?
Yeah, I think there's external forces and internal forces. And, obviously in storytelling, we have the internal conflict, the external conflict, all of that kind of stuff. And I think, if we look at storytelling, it mirrors a lot of that if you just sort of step back and see what's going on. So there's this external pressure that we have to create content, and it has to be prolific, and it has to show up on X schedule, on, ABC platforms. And so there is this idea that if we don't keep pumping out this content, we're going to be left behind. And so when you have that hanging over your head, what do? You look for efficiencies, you look for processes, you look for the easy button. What actually ends up happening is you end up triggering the algorithm to ignore you, and you become invisible. The internal pressure is people are going to think I'm stupid. They're going to judge me. They're going to not see how that relates to the fact that I'm a plumber, or I'm an accounting firm, or I'm a law office. And if I say that, it's going to make people scratch their heads. Well, again, the opposite is true. And so you have these two competing forces that when you go with your internal voice and you succumb to the external pressure, you're actually doing yourself harm. What we've seen, and of course, I work at a digital marketing agency, and the world of AI has sort of flipped everything on its head.
Totally.
We're looking at how these large language models categorize their recommendations for a query that comes out. And so, and I'll just touch briefly on this and we can dig in however you want. But in the past, if you were looking for a business or something related to a product or service, you would type in a query and then Google would present back a search engine result page, which we call a SERP, S-E-R-P. And so then it's just a bunch of links, blue links as we call them, that it's up to you to figure out, okay, am I going for the number 1 spot? Am I going for the number 2 spot? Which one am I going to believe is the most credible? We have ads that show up and, so forth. What these large language models do is they're actually presenting some thinking, and they are contextually giving you a result that's more like a conversation, right? And so it's almost being like an advisor and saying, if you're looking for a location near you, here's what we recommend. There's going to be a lot of customization. So if you're searching for a restaurant and I'm searching for a restaurant and we are sitting side by side, it's going to know that you prefer Italian food and I might prefer Mediterranean food. And so it's going to really be customized to that. And so when we think about that as a business, brand dimensions are what is allowing businesses to show up. It's almost like we've rewound the clock back to the days of PR. And so when you are reticent to put stuff out there about who you are, who's the face of the company, who are the subject matter experts, you're actually cheating yourself and the visibility of your brand, because when these large language models go out and they go out in a fan, not just a targeted, they categorize you contextually. The more that you have and the richer the context around your business, the more likely it is that these large language models are going to be able to find you and match you up with the people that are looking for you. And so if businesses are willing to go down this path, there is a huge competitive advantage that I've never seen literally in the world of digital marketing. And I would encourage people to really read more, understand what's going on. And that should give you an excuse to get out there and be yourself and treat this in a little bit different light.
That last 2 minutes was just so well stated and so easy to understand. I appreciate you very much for that. You just laid it out perfectly, I think. I was very interested in talking about your role or learning about your role at Thrive. You're basically in charge of brand communications. Is that fair to say, more or less?
Yeah, that's an interesting title. I can tell you that really the owner came to me back in the fall and said that we've sort of been a secret for the last 20 years. And we've probably got a lot of those scars and bruises that would be helpful to talk to other people about. And so I would like for you to step out and be the face of the organization. Historically, I was running operations. We have about 175 team members. And so I was running operations for all the people that did the work. And I actually came to Thrive about 5 years ago to expand their strategy department. So in 5 years, I've had 5 different titles, but now I'm sort of out. And when we say brand communication, it's really telling our story and talking to cool people like you. And
Hey, great. Perfect. So my question there is, with such, we're just coming off of just what we were talking about finding your abracadabra, right? With such a large company that does so much marketing work, it's not real, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. It's not very like niche or specialized, it seems. Thrive's a big agency all over the country.
Yep.
How do you do that with a company that offers and does so much? How do you find that story?
Yeah, so great point. We've got about 1,000 active clients, and we have a large team that we're not interested in that cookie cutter approach. We want to talk with each owner or each stakeholder within the business and understand what is their business problem, where is their visibility at this point. And so through that work at the strategy level, we have about 175 data points that we look at for every new client. And I know that seems exhaustive, but you have to be that detailed about the variety of the different types of businesses. No, we don't specialize in any industry. That, sometimes cuts us out of a deal because people want to work with an agency that only works with this kind of person. We see it as a competitive advantage because we deal with the mom and pops all the way up to the large franchise and enterprise organizations, and we get to see it at all levels. And so I think it's just an attitude of, we really care about stewarding that client's money, and we want to know what makes them tick. And we believe there's a competitive advantage that every business has, whether they're local, regional, national, international, and we want to be able to tell that story in the best way possible. So I think it's just a mindset that you can lather, rinse, and repeat and just give generic sort of advice, or you can really be committed to go, no, we're going to dig under the hood and really figure out what makes this tick and how it runs. And yeah.
Got it. Let's, I have an exercise for us if you're okay with that. I want to kind of workshop, you mentioned mom and pop shops. Most of our audience, I would say, and the people that I like to work for and work with are smaller operations.
Yeah.
I come from a documentary filmmaking background, so you're constantly like under-resourced. So that's the type of people that are brands that I vibe with, right? That are, how do you make, a connection when you don't have a lot of time, money, crew, etc. So let's say that you're onboarding a mom and pop shop, a young, smaller company, less than 10 folks, maybe even less than 5. Where do you start in that onboarding process to start to uncover, or like lay out the pieces of the puzzle so that you can help them with their marketing? Obviously, as you said, you have a pretty, exhaustive process that you use to really understand that. Walk me through how you might address that with a smaller company in a way that people can understand if they need to do it themselves, like where they could start. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Really, it starts with, what is the business goal? And so if you're not able to articulate that business goal, then why are you hiring us? And so there's typically some frustration, I would say more often than not, of somebody who maybe promised something that they didn't deliver. And so we go, okay, well, what were you frustrated about? What was the goal that you were going for?
Right.
And so that starts to quantify how we continue that conversation. So let's say that they're a local brick and mortar business and they don't have enough people coming in the door, right? Or they're a brick and mortar business and they want to expand to some online activities. Or they're only online, but they are not seeing the traffic that they want. Or they have a local service area that they cover. Nobody comes into the office, which this could be some sort of home service like electrician, plumber, roofer, those types of people.
Sure.
And the competition is, they believe, getting more leads, or they subscribe to a lead provider and they're paying too much for a cost per lead. And so it's hard to answer in a generic sense, but you have to sort of figure out, where am I and what's my pain? And so if we go back to typical story structure, the hero, which is the client, we believe that, and we're the guide, has something they want and they have to overcome obstacles to achieve it. And so if we don't know what the final goal is, then it's hard for us to put the plan together. So I would say that's step one. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, if you want to, but I think that did a good job at least answering where we start, because people often approach it from the wrong angle.
Yeah.
But I find it's the same thing with storytelling. I mean, I've found myself saying very similar stuff to what you just said in terms of like, what story do I tell? Well, what are you trying to achieve? And then we reverse engineer it. So I think it's one of those things, Jimmy, that's like, it sounds so obvious, right?
Right.
But it's right in front of your face, so it's easy to look past it. So it's always important for me to like, let's slow things down a little bit and start with the basics, because you've already said it. We're out here looking for these easy ways to do it, and sometimes it's right in front of your face. So it's like, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Because that's where we got to start. I think that is very fair. No, I'd like to get back to the similarities in magic and storytelling. That's something that I know is an intersection of yours. It's also very intriguing and interesting to me.
Sure.
So I'll tee it up for you first, just by saying, like, what are some of the basic similarities that you found in your work to marketing, communications, and storytelling from your background as a magician? I almost say musician.
Well, let me take you through something, and
Please.
I think that'll help us as we break it apart. Is that fair?
Okay, yeah, totally.
Okay. I'm sitting in Charleston, South Carolina, but I don't think I ever asked you where you're sitting.
Oh, and I know that about you. I'm in Durham, North Carolina, so not too far from you.
Right.
And we're
Okay,
in the
now I do
Carolinas,
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just right up the road. I have family in the Raleigh-Morrisville area, so
Nice.
I'm familiar with that area. And so are you in a single family home, a condo? Where are you
Single
sitting?
family.
Okay. And is that in a neighborhood?
It is.
Oh, great. And do you have any pets that you walk in the neighborhood? Do you walk with your kids? Give me a little
Definitely
context.
walk with the kids. The pet is a house cat who is desperately trying to get out for walks, and we're auditioning the idea of a leash.
I actually saw something on TV the other day, and I was like, I didn't know you could walk a cat, but
Yeah,
that's cool.
I didn't either, but I see so many people doing it, and so we literally like bought one. We're thinking about doing it.
Yeah. Well, let's take a walk. Big neighborhood, small neighborhood, busy streets, calm streets.
A little mix of both. We're in a small neighborhood, but across the street, the somewhat busy street is the bigger expansion of that neighborhood. So that's where we would take our loop, and that's where we go trick-or-treating and such.
Okay. So let's go down a road that maybe you don't go down often. You know a couple of the houses, but maybe some you really haven't stopped and stared at. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm with you.
So head down that street, and maybe the listeners can picture the same little walk in their neighborhood or wherever they live. And the house doesn't have to be really clear in your mind. You're a storyteller, so you can fill in some of the details, but we're stopped in front of a house. Do you have one in mind?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So I want you to just sort of stand there and look at the front door. And the interesting thing is that front door is open. And I'm going to give you a couple of options here. It's almost like a choose your adventure. And so the first option is that door is open and you don't really see anybody around. But as you sort of look around, leaned up against the entryway inside the front door is like this stick. It's not a small stick. It's probably the size of like a baseball bat, but it's not a baseball bat. It's kind of natural wood. Like a club or a branch or just something. And you're like, wow, that is kind of weird. I wonder if that house just got broken into. I have never seen that before. I wonder if I should investigate that. So that's number one. Second option is that door is open and there's some light that you can see sort of through a hallway. And it just kind of feels cool. Like, I'll bet there's some friends and family coming over and they have left that door open because they know these people are just going to walk in, head to the back, and they know where the party is. And so it's kind of a cool feeling to be like, wow, I wonder how many people are in there. Maybe I should get to know them and I would be invited to an event like that. So that's option two. Option three is you're standing there and as you look at the front door, your eye kind of gets distracted over to a tree to your right and there's a shovel leaned up against that tree. And then you look around and there's like all these little holes that have been dug in the yard. And you're thinking, okay, that's really strange. Either they have a bunch of goldfish graves that they're digging, they're planting something and they've gone in the backyard to get that, or this is probably the weirdest scene I've seen in a while. So that's option three. Option four is we're sort of in that golden hour of light and the sun is just coming in at a perfect angle. Everything's got this cool glow. That door is still open, but the way that sunlight is reflecting off of the floor, wow, it is just shining like diamonds. It's glowing. It's got a little sparkle to it. And you're like, I think I could just stand here and sort of hang out for a little while. This is really cool. Okay, which one of those options feels like something that you'd like to investigate further? We had the stick leaned against the wall. We had the door open for family and friends. We had the shovel leaned against the tree. And then we had the floor really sparkling and shining.
I think for me, the stick or the shovel, and I lean towards the shovel.
Okay, the shovel. So you there's something about it that you're like, okay, that's kind of strange. Maybe I should make sure everything's okay. And so as you walk up the front walkway, you notice there's 13 steps to get from the front walkway to the porch. How many steps do you get up before you hear somebody say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
I don't know. I feel the door's open. Closer to the top, maybe halfway.
So halfway, 13, is that 6, 7? Where are we?
7, yeah.
7?
6,
Okay.
yeah.
So I just gave you a bunch of different scenarios. You leaned in, and, if I talk to you tomorrow, you may have had a different feeling. The folks listening, they may have picked something completely different, right? And so you said the shovel was sort of interesting to you, and then a little more than halfway, 7. And Rain, I don't know if you noticed, but over my shoulder, there's been a deck of cards sitting behind me the entire time. Do you see that?
I do.
I'm going to grab this and make sure it stays in frame.
I don't like
And so what we were actually doing, Rain, is picking a card. And so the club leaned against the wall was the clubs.
I'm leaving.
The hearts was love, welcoming friends and family. The shovel was, of course, the spades. And the floor shining like diamonds was, of course, the diamonds, right? And so there are 13 cards if you treat an ace as 1, right? So ace through king would be 13 cards. And I asked you how far you got up that set of stairs, and I gave you a choice. And you said around the middle. I said 6 or 7. You said 7. So in effect, you've actually chosen the 7 of spades. Now, before we started, and that, I mean, people can rewind and look at this. It's been here the entire time. I'm going to take these cards out of this deck, and we'll just go through them one by one here.
Yeah.
There's one card and one card only that's reversed. I don't know about you, Rain, but
Jimmy,
if I were to turn this over and it was the 7 of spades, that would be pretty insane.
yeah, I see it, pal. I see it. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Bravo, my friend.
All right.
Oh,
so
man.
That was a little bit of a journey, but I figured it was appropriate for our storytelling conversation. So I could just sit here and I could tell you about a magic trick, or I could have you experience it. And so I'm going to break this down, and I want you to tell me how you felt at these different situations. And so the first part, when you started asking about the convergence between magic and a marketing message, and I would say it could even be a leadership message.
True.
Do you remember what I started to do?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. I started asking you where you're from. We had a little conversation about Durham, North Carolina.
Cheeky little. I thought that was genuine.
It is. I'm genuinely interested, but
I didn't know that was part of the shtick. But yes, I do recall, and it felt very organic.
Right. So you didn't even recognize what was going on.
Not a drop.
Because I'm not faking it. I am genuinely interested.
Fair.
But that's a point of connection, right?
Yes.
And so we are having a conversation. And what am I doing? I'm asking about you. I'm asking about your family. I'm asking about where you live. Like, how does that make you feel?
I mean, open, because I know one. I mean, this is unique to us, but obviously, I know you can find different points of connection. You're in South Carolina, so like I already feel a kinship.
Yeah.
So when you asked me, I was excited to tell you, and then you knew where I was from, and you knew the town next door, and So I mean that, I lived in New York for a while, and anytime you meet someone from the South, you kind of already feel like cousins.
Yeah, of course. So that's actually a release of oxytocin. And oxytocin is that sort of feel good, this is going great, I'm enjoying this conversation. And so that's a point of connection. And so a magician is going to do that, whether we're having this one-on-one connection over Zoom, whether I'm walking out on a stage, you have to establish rapport with the audience. And so that's the same thing in a marketing message. You can't just jump in. You have to let your audience know that you know what pain they're going through, right? And so now, once we've got that connection, I open the door to curiosity. And so I think that's what's missing a lot now, is opening up that door to curiosity. People go for the close too quickly. And the curiosity is what keeps people on the edge of their seat. It keeps them engaged, right? The storytelling is the same way. What's going to keep me turning the page? What's going to keep me glued to the TV or the movie, or, whatever the case may be. And so then what did I start to do? Now I have a connection. We're going to walk out the front door. We're going to walk down the street. The people listening are probably imagining in the theater of the mind, which is a very, very wonderful place to be, a typical scenario of walking, and I ask you to stop in front of a house. And now I'm giving you all these scenarios. What do those scenarios feel like to you?
Can you rephrase the question?
Well, I start describing something. Are you engaged? Are you picturing what's going on? Are you wondering like, where the heck is Jimmy going?
No. I leaned into it, and I think what you did a great job of also is not only establishing the rapport of like where we're from, but you asked about my neighborhood. So I'm picturing my neighborhood. You asked about pets. I'm picturing my cat. We laughed about the leash. When you tell me to go on a walk, I went on that walk in my mind. I found a house, which again was vague as you instructed, but looked like the houses of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in deep. I was picturing it. I was visualizing it 100%. I was fully engaged.
And so what are you thinking, like, where are we going with this? Or are you just kind of along for the ride?
No, I was following you. I was at that point, I think I see where you're going here. At that point, I trusted you.
Yeah.
Like, you had me, you were taking me somewhere. And I suppose because of the rapport and the connection that we had just built, it allowed space for that trust, because I didn't question where we were going. Even when you entered the fourth scenario, which for some people might be like, okay, this is how many scenarios are there? Like, I was with it because my curiosity was piqued.
Yeah. And so you also have to read your audience. I know that, we're on a podcast. There's a limited amount of time. I don't want to bore you or the audience. And so I have to understand, how quickly do I need to get through these 4 scenarios? Because in the end, in my brain, I have to get you to pick a card, right?
Yeah.
And so I could abbreviate that. I could elongate that. We could joke around about different things, but I have to get to the point, because otherwise, after a while, if there's too much curiosity without something coming next. And so the interesting thing about when you open up this loop of curiosity, it's a release of dopamine. And so we hear a lot about dopamine and social media addiction. It's actually not the addiction to dopamine. It's the expectation of a reward. And so when you post on social media, you're expecting somebody to like it, to share it, to comment on it, right?
Yeah.
But if you stay in that heightened state too long, it can be exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so when I open up that dopamine flood in your brain, you're expecting a reward. Like, you're in it, you're okay. And I've done this enough where I can sort of gauge how much detail do I put before it gets excruciating. I think when we have somebody who's a writer, there's a balance. My wife reads a lot of fiction, and so I'll go, how's the book going? And she's like, oh my gosh, if she just doesn't get on with it, I don't need all this detail, right? And so there has to be a happy balance. Well, now I've opened up the door, and I have to close this, and I have to come to the climax of the trick. And so what I really want you to do is I want you to start to fill in the gaps, and I want you to imagine, oh no, this is not possible. And you started to vocalize that. And I asked if you had noticed that there was a deck of cards, and it was probably something that you had not noticed. And, I have my camera setting, so it's a little blurry. But when I said a deck of cards, like, immediately your brain focused and you went, oh no.
Totally.
And then you started to piece together what was going on. Tell me how that felt.
Oh, I mean, I've felt a physical reaction. I mean, pardon the expression, but I tingled, right? Like
Yeah.
I already knew what was coming. I was blindsided by it, so I felt like not tricked, but surprised. I mean,
Hmm.
I was surprised that I was played that well. Very good at what you do, sir. But I was also excited. Like I couldn't wait to see it. It's kind of like that's like a jump scare or something in a horror film. Like you're in the theater
Yeah.
and you know it's coming, and you just can't, but you can't wait for it, and you have to pop it, or it's like it's gonna plague you forever. But yeah, that's how I felt, legitimately.
Yeah. And so that's a release of serotonin. And that release of
Mm.
serotonin is like, okay, it all makes sense now. I get it. The four scenarios, the steps on the thing. If he turns that seven of spades around, I'm going to freak out. And everything is right with the world. And so that's the way you want your customers to feel. Like the intrigue part is, and this is one of the most powerful phrases in marketing, is what if? What if I could deliver X, Y, and Z for you without the pain of, whatever you've been through in the past? And so then the audience goes, I don't know if that's possible. Like, can that happen? And they start to tell me how that's possible. And so that's a very natural framework for bringing someone to you instead of you chasing them, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so it's kind of the lens that I see the world of marketing through. It's a structure that it's taken me way too long to reverse engineer, but it not only makes sense, it is a complete structure. It follows the biology and the physiology of what goes on in a complete conversation. And it puts you in a situation where you're not chasing people down the street, right? We're just having this conversation. It feels natural. And there are ways to duplicate this in a sales presentation, in an email sequence, in a blog post, in a video you might put online. Like this works every single time. Now, the one thing that I didn't say is we talked earlier about how you have to know where you're going, right?
Yeah.
And so if you boiled every magic trick down into its basic effect, there's 13 effects. So there's a vanish, there's a prediction, there's a transposition, there's an appearance. And so when you think in your head, okay, what is the magic that I want to perform for my audience? Then everything should be centrally focused on delivering that effect and not get confused, not trying to deliver more magic than is necessary. And so there's a lot of components that go into this, but yeah, anxious to hear, like, if you thought that's what we were going to talk about, but the only way I know to explain it is to actually go through that process so that you can live it, and then it makes deeper sense.
Buddy, I am so grateful for you for doing that. I mean, this is one of the most memorable moments I've had on the show, and I mean that sincerely. I mean, this is storytelling, show don't tell, right? Like you could have just answered, in theory, but you did it. It was a 10-minute masterclass on I mean, that could be the podcast. I'm going to keep you for a little bit longer. I know you got something to get to, but no, it was masterful. I love the way you delivered it. It was so unique. No, I appreciate you so much because, again, I mean, that's why that cliche exists about show don't tell, because when I'm teaching storytelling workshops, I can give the lecture and be like, okay, now go, your turn. And it's like crickets, like nobody can do it. But when we start interacting and doing it together, then all of a sudden they get it. But for the first few years when I was doing this work, it blew my mind how I was like, I just told you what to do. And when I ask you to do it, you're like, don't know. You're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's because people don't learn that way. Nothing sinks in that way. Now I'll never forget what you just did, and I don't think the listeners or viewers will either. So it was perfect. I want to stay in that space for just a little bit longer. One of the things that I thought about a lot before having you on the show was timing. So with magic, with comedy, I mean, timing is everything. And specifically, I want to talk about this through the lens of, you alluded to this, but you definitely showed it and displayed it in what you just did with me, is we're looking to capture attention, yes, But I think people misconstrue that these days with like the hook, right? You see so much about, the first
Yeah.
second, the first 3 seconds, doing it fast, flashy, yada, 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 yada. I know that that's not the only way to do that, but I think a lot of people miss that, or they think that is the only way, is to jump in front of you.
Mhm.
So talk to me about timing and how, that aha moment could be better placed somewhere else, or just how you approach that, or the similarities between timing of your storytelling and your marketing messages compared to
Yeah.
magic.
So yeah, the hook, and I would say that is predominantly on social media, and I would say it's a real thing that we're trying to stop the thumb and stop the scroll. And if you look at the structure that I just laid out, typically the first line, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and so LinkedIn, you basically get 65 characters for line 1 and 45 characters for line 2. And that's your opportunity to stop them. And so that first line has to be a connection point. What are you going to say that has that person go, oh, they're talking to me? And then the second line is the curiosity, where they go, okay, I'm going to click the more button. I think that can happen in video. And so I would say, if you can't beat them, join them. And you have to figure out, how are you going to get permission to then have a longer conversation in the post, in the video. Like it can literally start with the first 3 seconds, but then you could keep them, and you're going to look at your metrics. I know, Instagram and TikTok are all about reels and shorts, and YouTube, where typically we're talking about a 45 to 60 second video. But if you can keep them engaged for 10, 15, 20 minutes, the permission that you're getting has to happen quickly. Now, when we talk about, on stage, it's a little bit different scenario, because somebody has bought a ticket, they're sitting in a theater, they're
Fair.
They're in it, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to rush out and do your flashiest thing. They may have heard of you, they may not have heard of you, but you still have to get that point of connection. And so I may come out on stage and, I would say, if we take it off of social media and we talk about timing, if you're a business leader and you're addressing your team, if you are giving a speech, don't come out and say, oh, I'd like to thank everybody for having me today. Boy, isn't the weather nice. Hope you brought your, like, you've just wasted the point of connection, right? You have to come out, and I might say something to the effect, if I know I'm speaking to a particular type of audience, something that relates to them, right? I might pick somebody out on the front row and say hello to them to establish rapport with one person versus multiple people. And so one of the things that I learned, and I'll just take a little side jaunt here, I was invited to be part of a training session in Montreal with a Broadway director who was in the original cast of Annie. He directed, 22 Broadway productions, also a magician. And so we all show up, and, it's this beautiful chalet on this crystal clear lake. And we're under this tent with open sides, and there's this stump in the middle of the yard. And so he tells everybody, one by one, I want you to go up on this stump, and I want you to tell me your name, where you're from, give me your address and your phone number, and tell me what the name of your pet is. And we're like, okay, this is really weird. And so it's like about 8 or 10 of us. And, we're thinking in our heads, okay, does he want us to project? Does he want to hear the variance in our intonation? Like, what is it? And so we're all used to performing, typically in a theater setting where there's lights in your face. And, so we project and we stand tall, and we're like, what are we doing? And so, as one person jumps off the stump and goes back and sits down, we're all kind of whispering. And then at the end, he goes, well, you all failed. I'm like, I don't even know what we failed. What did we fail? And so he goes up and he jumps on the stump. And if you can imagine, let's say 10 guys sitting in a row across the front, and to his right, the audience's left, he looks at the first person. He said, hey, I'm Bob Fitch. He turns his head. He looks at the second person. I live in Manhattan, New York City, right downtown. He looks at the next person. My phone number is da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden, we all got it. We're like, oh my gosh. You're not talking to a group of 10 people. You're talking to 10 individual people. You walk out on a stage, you're not talking to 150 or 200 people. You're talking to 150 individual people. And so when you're crafting a marketing message, you cannot talk to the crowd. You cannot say, hey, all of you. You have to say, hi, friend, singular. And you have to bring it down to the point where that person receiving that message feels like that you're the person, the only person that they're talking to. And, I could sit here and, tell you 20 other lessons, but that one sticks out in my mind is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We've all been performing for, years and years and years. And that one simple exercise now reframes how I walk out on stage, how I communicate. And so the question is timing. Be comfortable with taking a breath. Be comfortable with getting your thoughts together. Be comfortable with a pause, with phrasing in short ways to connect with your audience. Knowing your audience. Do you need to speed up? Do you need to slow down? Do you need more contextual reference? It's going to vary depending on who your audience is. But the word that I keep repeating is, who are you talking to? What's in it for them? And if you're sitting in their seat, just like we were sitting in that theater, sitting in those chairs looking at a stump, like the way we felt when he looked at us individually, I'll never forget that. Just like, the exchange that we had with the little trip down the street and picking a house.
Absolutely. And that applies to whatever medium that you're using too. If you're talking, you LinkedIn post, Instagram reel, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Last question. One of the things that I heard in your TEDx speech that really stuck with me is the 3 parts of the magic trick, meaning starting with the ordinary. I'll let you explain it. But it just reminded me immediately of storytelling, right? The 3-act structure. And one of those, if you were to follow Joseph Campbell's monomyth, is, the ordinary world. So I think that transition is very similar. There are parallels there. Once again, can you explain to me and the audience about those 3 parts that are embedded in any magic trick?
Yeah, so it's really taking something ordinary that everybody knows something about. And so in the TEDx talk, I have a rope that I talk about. And then the transformation to the extraordinary. And so you're taking something that people are familiar with and is a common ground, and then something magical is happening, right? And so we talked about the 13 effects of levitation, vanish, appearance, transformation, transposition, all those types of things. But the part that it's in the middle is the secret, right? And the secret is sort of the behind the scenes things, the underlying structure, and you talk about the monomyth. Most people are not able to dissect what's going on, but there is a structure underneath that's making that happen. The same thing with a magic trick. And so in that, I say that many of you want to know how that's done. And you actually don't want to know how it's done. You actually want to provide joy and wonder to somebody else. And so that secret in the middle is, how are you going to go about bringing joy and wonder to somebody else? And that could be different for everybody. It could be, I could give off 100 different explanations. But again, it's that bridge between the ordinary and the extraordinary, and then that part in the middle that's sort of the messy, fun, meat of what's going on. I think that's another framework that can help filter the way that you go about whatever you're trying to communicate.
Absolutely. Well, Jimmy, I know you got to go, but I got to thank you again, man. This was great. Sincerely, masterclass. I am still kind of still got that tingly feeling. One might even say, Jimmy, that it was magical. Well, thank you. It was fun. Time flew. I'm sure we could go on for hours, but yeah, absolutely. It's great. Yeah. Nice having you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Sure.
My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.